Okay, so let's just twist. Just take it easy to start with and let it build up. Think of the chest rising upwards. So you don't want the stick to pull your head forwards. And then just tipping. And just a few more twists. just holding the stick above the head. Like when we do the breathing exercise, so just letting the spine bend forwards, but the tail feeling like it's coming under. Really leaning back here. Trying to bend the spine sort of equally all the way through. So just trying to keep the arms straight. So if it's a broom handle and you have your hands right at the end of it, then it's easier. Make sure the feet are lined up. So the outside edge is parallel and the little toe feeling like it's really just driving forwards along the outside edge. So the big toes are definitely in. It's quite a radical difference really, because it opens up across the lower back. So it feels unstable and it feels difficult. You may get pain in the knees. What we're trying to do in this sort of work is just remove all security and comfort. Anything that makes you feel fragile and makes it more difficult is basically good. So now just moving from leg to leg, feeling the stretch across the lower back. And just try and have a mind for these outside edges. So it's no longer a place that we just slip into. It's now a place that's aligned. So John used to say, every day, search for weakness. So just looking for ways of doing things that require your whole attention, where your mind can't wander. Otherwise, you'd be very conscious that you were doing it wrong. So it's a quiet mind that is attending to central equilibrium, rather than a mind that knows what it's doing. If your mind is wandering, if you find yourself thinking to yourself, then you're depressed. We don't realize just how depressed we are. What I find interesting is that it's often the people I know that are most upbeat, that are most cheerful and jolly, and they're the ones that are the most depressed, because they're just hiding from it. And they're the people it's most difficult to actually bring into the realm of spirit, because they're so used to swaggering with their own ego. At least people that demonstrate depression have a little bit of fragility and openness. Bring it into riding horse. So just make sure the feet are still outside edges aligned forwards. It makes it a lot easier to split the two sides of the body. So in order to get energy from the ground and into the upper body, we have to unify upper and lower. So remove the break that's normally here. But in order to move around with agility, we need to separate left and right. So it should feel like the 2 feet have some sort of independence. The 2 halves of the body are not too attached in the middle. So I am the play of left and right. I'm not a central authority that's telling my body what to do. So the more relaxed you are, the more they'll separate. And then the more your mind has to be really attending to the equilibrium, otherwise you'll fall. And now let's just try the circle one. So the placement of the feet is encouraging the sacral area to spread and relax and open up. But let that come all the way up. So particularly the back heart and the back of the head, they're similarly expanding and opening. It's almost like you've got blinkers on. It's from these little toes and the outside edges, there's a sense of containment. So particularly here, this one's really coming around. So these circles are not just in your arms, they're in all of your energy, all the way up from the ground. And then let's just bring it back to riding horse. Okay, now let's do the breathing. Feel the tail. So here, my head goes back and my tail goes back as well. And then here, this pulls my head forwards and the tail under. So we're just trying to make sure we've got movement in the head, because that tends to be kept too still and rigid. But also, we want to feel that it's all being generated by movement in the tail. This new placement of the feet really helps the lower back open up, the tail especially. But it also really destabilizes everything. So it's almost like you have to relearn everything we've done. It's just encouraging us to let go of tension that we don't need anymore, especially in the sacrum. My tail goes back, and then it just pulls under, and that brings my head over as well. Trying to feel like it's the activity in the tail that's making it all happen. And gradually just let the two sides really loosen. So it's never quite in phase. It's always turning a little bit left to right. There's a sense of wriggling in the spine. So it comes alive, in other words. We want to feel the life in the exercise, not just the work. And then let's just start turning with it. So as you open up, just turn to the side. And then as you close it, pull back to the front. Feel the action of the legs. So as you pull the hands in, you're also pulling the feet towards each other. And then here you're pushing the feet apart, which is what makes the turn happen. This pulls you back to the front as you pull the feet together. As you push the feet apart, it pushes each hip past the front. So your legs are doing the same thing that your arms are doing. It's difficult just getting the mind in that little toe edge. We're so used to having the mind in the big toe and positioning our foot according to where the big toe is. The big toe is pushing down into the ground, and that will just squeeze you across into the outside edges and will just bring the arch of the foot up. So the little toe tends to get neglected and crushed, especially in shoes. The little toe shouldn't angle in like this, which it does on most people. It should go straight forwards along the line of the outside edge, and it should be able to really sneak out to the side. Just have to retrain the feet, really. And the best way to do that is just to not wear shoes when you're inside. Just be conscious of just trying to spread your toes every time you step. So you're spreading them and then clenching them as you bring the weight into the foot. Feel central equilibrium. So gravity is pulling me down, but the earth is pushing up through me. And I just want to really feel that play between them. So my mind has to really be with it. I can't afford to lock it stiff and then start thinking about something else. A play up and down, but also a play left and right. And the more you can be with it, the more energy there will be. So the mind that is quiet and that can stay with central equilibrium, that's the mind that works for you. So there's that saying, you are your own worst enemy, or the mind is its own worst enemy. We're trying to just produce a mind that is our friend. When we operate it, it does us good rather than harming us. And that's just basically one that can just stay with the moment and just be really interested, not in controlling it, but in just observing it. Full and empty. Make sure that front foot is aligned. So I've got tiles here, so it's easy to just put one foot against the tiles. And the other foot to the corner, but it's the little toe pointing to the corner. Just be very conscious of that outside edge. And then just moving backwards and forwards and just feeling the filling and empty. So I empty and then I fill. So just try one foot at a time just to get into it, and then we can do them both. So the front leg is emptying, and then the front leg fills with the ground. Empties and fills. As it empties, really spread the toes, especially the little one. And as it fills, the toes crunch up a bit. Spreading, clenching. Emptying, so it's sinking and flowing out. And then this is filling or rising. So remember, I'm not filling it with myself, I'm filling it with the ground, so it comes up. And that has a cheering effect. As this energy comes up me, it tends to right my posture and lift my chest. Whereas when we sink, the opposite happens. So up. Keep it relaxed across the sacrum. And then just try the back leg. The quality of your work depends entirely upon the quality of the mind that's attending it. It's got very little to do with your body. The people who I work with that do this sort of thing best are the old people that are being forced to be mindful vigilantly because they're always afraid that they're going to fall. So here they're really trembling as they do this. It's so alive. Now let's just bring both hands in. So one fills and the other one empties. The empty one fills and the full one empties. All the time, just making sure you've got these feet lined up. So my outside edge aligned with the room. So when you empty, you can really feel the relaxation that just flows out. And then when we fill, we don't want to tense up. So it's filling with the ground rather than with my tension. Something comes up all the way. I'd like to feel it getting to the top of the head. Just feel the posture. The only way it will get to the top of the head is if my sacrum is heavy, hanging loosely through my body. If there's any sense of me leaning forwards as I come into the front foot, it won't get to the top of the head. And now just the back foot, so filling the back leg and empty. both hands. So one filling and the other emptying. Try and feel the hip bones holding the sacrum very loosely and lightly. Bring it back to riding horse. Basically, having the feet angled in a little bit like this makes everything more difficult. But I suspect that's only for a while. Feel the equilibriums, the play between these two independent halves. The feeling is that my sacrum is being jostled from side to side constantly by the two sides of my body. It's really shaking and trembling. And that energy is just a spirited awareness. So it's an awareness of things as they actually are, rather than being aware of how I would like them to be. We don't appreciate just to what extent we are all control freaks, that we're just making the world the way we want it, the way we're accustomed to it. That's why people are depressed, because they refuse to allow things to be what they are. And so there's no spirit. So depression is just lack of spirit, really, a heavy heart. Everyone's heart is heavy. This is what becomes revealed when I work with people. Everyone I touch and I work with is depressed. I can always lift them. I can always bring them into a less depressed state. For some of them, it's difficult. It takes 2 or 3 hours. Back into the middle, back into that central equilibrium. So just feel that play between the sinking and the rising, but also the play between the two halves. So my sacrum is really singing, it's really vibrating and trembling in the middle. So we just want to work in such a way that it brings us alive. It makes us more alive than we usually are. Most people are depressed. What that really means is they're dead. They're not really alive. This is what John always used to say. The main reason, I think, is that we hide from death. So they always say, don't they, you're at your most alive at the point of death. When death is in the air, like in the battlefield or in an accident or whatever, then that's when your spirit really comes up. And people they just shun that now. Everything's safe and comfortable. So if you're running from death, turning from death, then you're turning from life as well. And life now becomes something you want it to be rather than something it is. We design our lives. And the more money and time and intelligence we have to make those good designs, the more fortunate we think we are, whereas really it's the opposite. It's those that have no choice that are really at that trembling edge, that are really alive. Okay, now let's just try the shoulder one, remember? John used to say that if you do this every day, you won't get a heart attack. But you really have to sort of really wrench through the chest with the arm. Feel the fullness that's come up the front leg and has gone into the arm that you're circling. Pull here. Trying to pull right into the deep heart. Make sure your outside edge is lined up. Feel the sacrum just hanging loosely. Do more with the left arm because it's closer to the heart. I'm filling here. The energy that comes up, I want to feel like it's come into this hand, the opposite hand. And then here I fill the back leg and the energy comes into the ground has a presence in the hand. So when you place your hand on a person, they should feel the ground beneath your opposite foot. So when you yield, you're not only yielding to the person, you're yielding to the ground. So your yielding is bringing the ground up and bringing them in. So the three of you have this sort of meeting with the earth that's come up inside you. Feel the importance of this hip for directing the energy in the hand. So I really have to pull this round. Otherwise my energy will go in the direction of the back leg. So I'm relaxing the ground up my body and into the opposite hand. Sink and relax both empties you and fills you. Just depends where your weight is. Feel the little toes and the little fingers. So here, my little toe, little fingers really extending. And then here, this side. It's like, when a country gets invaded by a more dominant force, people flee to the mountains. They flee to the places that are difficult to get to. And that's what's happened with our bodies as well. Spirit has fled to the vestiges. So the little fingers, the little toes, the tail, and then this energy body that John was investigating. And then the other side. Outside edges again. So it needs to be quite exact, because if you have the big toes too far in, it just all becomes too contained. If your little toe is at all out, you're going to leak. And the lower back's not going to open up properly. So we are guided by what feels right rather than what feels good. Just feel the truth. In other words, don't lie to yourself. bring it up with the outside edges parallel. So your big toes are almost touching, but your heels are quite a distance apart. And then just get the central equilibrium. This sort of bounce in the legs, the tendency to turn. When you get it right, it should feel precarious and shaky and unstable. If it's not shaking, then you're not there. It's quite easy then, is all you have to do is just work long enough to get to that point where you're shaking. Let's just try the first posture. Up toward up left from here. It's more difficult. Stepping out. And when you put the foot down, really conscious of that outside edge. And then really conscious of this outside edge here. So I want to feel that little toe is just going in a straight line here, not going out to the back. And then putting this foot down. And you can place the heel down and then just squeeze into the heel and use that pressure to squeeze the little toe out along its line. So now, because the feet are they're not as far out as normal, you often don't need to bring round the back foot. So everything's just a lot more contained. So it can really tremble inside without leaking. Try again on the other side. So feel the outside edges. You can practice outside edges when you're walking, because we're normally walking on pavement and you can see the line in the paving stones where they join. Be mindful of just aligning your little toes with those lines. Here, I just have to make sure this little toe line is forwards. Feeling this little toe. And then this foot goes down because my little toe has reached out. Heel down first and then really squeeze that little toe along it, which means when you come forwards, you really come forwards like this. It's almost like you've got this sort of protection here. And then you can expose yourself when you come into the front foot. One each again. Really aware of those little toes. Heel down first, if you like, so that that little toe can align. Little toe squeezing forwards. It's like I'm squeezing that little toe out by turning this way a bit. And then I can turn back to sweep this hand down. And then one on the other side. Feel these little toes. So this is like attention posture now. There was a time with John when we were in Highgate, we always started the form like this. And of course I was too stupid to feel it. But because of this concentrating on the outside edges as a director rather than simply a place to sink. So everything else we've been working on tends to sort of go out the window. So the bum tends to stick out a bit. We're putting the heels down first instead of the toes, which we were doing. But that's just the way of it. When a new insight crops up, it ruins everything. And then it just takes time for it to settle.